Hello, my friends. Today's the day where finally, I get to put together the car. We're doing it. The intake manifold and all the other extra parts and bits and bobbles are finally going back in the Z3. So let's just get into it because this is going to be a long day for me. For those of you who have been following my journey, you know that I've been going through a lot of hassle trying to get this cooling refresh done. Between parts not fitting right, the wrong size O-rings, you know, the thermostat not working the way I wanted it to, and just leaks and problems, and waiting for parts to come in, and it just, my 2-week project has turned into a 4-month-long project. This is not what I wanted, but today's the day. We're putting the intake manifold back in, and I'm just excited because I really want to drive my car. So let's just get this back together. So this is the next major step we got to do, is the reassembly. So I got my intake manifold right here. We've already replaced all of the vacuum stuff, all the check valves, all the vacuum lines have been replaced. I went ahead and I replaced the CCV on here. That's all brand new. We cleaned out the throttle body's been cleaned. The idle air control has been cleaned. So all that stuff's ready to get put back together. We got replacement gaskets here for the manifold. I also got replacement O-rings here for my fuel injectors. So we'll be doing that as well. Real quick, so here is what I got. This is a 10-piece kit from Elring. I'll have a link in the description for this. This comes in a pack of 10. I only need 6, but it comes in a pack of 10. And, you know, these are cheap, so it wasn't a big deal. And then we got Elring's gasket here as well. And I'll have a link for this as well. Got my tools. I got the extra little bolts and things that weren't able to go back. I put pretty much everything back where I took it off. I screwed everything back in. These were just a couple of the ones that I wasn't able to do that. But, we should be good to go. Most of them just go and reattach the manifold back together, and whatnot. But let's get this back in. So before we can put it back in, I have to change the gasket on it, and then we can start setting that in. We'll need to take the electrical connection for this electrical conduit here that goes to the fuel rail. We'll have to plug that in back here. Gotta plug that in first before I put the manifold on, otherwise I'm not going to be able to reach it very well or see it. So we'll plug that in and then put the manifold on. We also have this connector right here that I have labeled for my vacuum. This one plugs in to this check valve right here, and I will also plug that in before I fully seat this down, so that way it's easy to get to, because this is a bear to reach, because that goes up right against the water valve back here, and it's hard to reach it. So I definitely want to plug that in before I fully set everything in place. So let's go ahead and get this in. All right, we are all set up and ready to go. These are going to be easy to swap out. You just got to pull them off. You need to grab a hook tool, kind of pull this stuff loose here. There we go. And we'll yank these out. These are seated in there very well. Come on out of there. A little greasy. All right, so there was definitely an oil leak at some point, because these have a lot of engine oil kind of like seated in there. So I've already repaired all my oil leaks that I have, but so this must have been something from like a old oil leak. This might have been from my valve cover gasket was leaking and I fixed it. So this literally could have been some oil that got in before I had fixed that issue. So gross. And then these will just sit right back in. Just gonna make sure everything's nice and clean. Because the fuel injectors plug directly in on the opposite side, so I want to make sure this is nice and clean. All right. And just push them in real good. These have a good snug fit, so I'm not worried about these falling off. Unlike the valve cover gasket where I had to tack it down, I shouldn't have that issue with these. All right. New gasket on. Let's take this over to the car. We'll plug in the one electrical for the vacuum check valve back here as well. Actually, before I do that, let's get that other electrical plugged in underneath the engine there. All right, so we have this electrical rail right here. This is going to plug in right here, so we want to get that on now because it's going to be hard to reach it later. There. It's still going to be kind of in the way when we put this on, but it's one of those things, you know. We bring the manifold over. I'll pull all the paper towel out, but I'll wait until I'm ready to set that in because I do have leaves falling from the tree next door, and I don't want any of those leaves just falling in there before I'm ready to set this down on there. So this will kind of go on like that. So before I fully set that down, I'm just going to rest it there for a second. Spiders have been moving in. I gotta find that vacuum connector right here and plug this in while I can see where it goes. All right, that one's plugged in. Now I'll pull all the paper towel out and we'll try to fit this in place. Gets a little tricky because I'll have to move some electrical stuff out of my way. All right. So before I can fully set it down, I got some electrical connections that are hitting things. Pull all that stuff out of the way. So I see the bracket. I have a hose or something in the way there. Okay. Want to make sure that hose is going in front of the bracket, not behind it. Okay. Not sure how well you all are going to be able to see, but this is the oil supply line that will go to the CCV. And straight back there, where my finger's pointing, is the stud. And that bracket is over that stud. You're not going to see it very well. I can't get the camera in there. It's too tight, but you'll know what I mean if you've seen how I took it off. That bracket is on, and I'm just double checking underneath to make sure nothing is getting pinched. I think we're good on that front. All right, before I start mounting this down, I'm going to take that oil return line that connects from the CCV to the dipstick tube, and I'm going to snap it on the CCV. I want to make sure I got that on because I might have to pull this out to get it on and then put it back in. So I want to have that secure before I start bolting this back down. Okay, let's see if it'll go on nicely or if it's going to fight me. Now, where did it go? Okay, I feel it. Oh, it clicked in. Okay, that's secure. All right, now I'll get it back on the studs and then we can start bolting it down and go from there. Sweet, this is going so smooth. Okay, before I get that on, I also want to feed that fuel line that I struggled with. I had pulled that out and tucked that underneath here before. I want to get that underneath here to where I can get to it when it comes to that point of putting that back together. Okay, that's over back between the manifold and the firewall. I want to make sure that's in place because I don't want to struggle to get to that later. Once again, lift this on. Oh, it's still on the. Oh, great! It already fell onto the studs for me. How lovely! It just fell perfectly into place for me. It didn't resist or nothing. It's like, okay, we'll go back where you want us to go. No problem. How nice. All right, well then let's start bolting it down. Now, when I initially took them off, I had miscounted and I said there were 10. There are 9 nuts that fasten the upper part of the intake manifold back down to the engine. So 9. And these were 11 millimeter, or in my case, I don't have 11, so I'm using a 7/16 socket to put these back on. I'm just going to put them on finger tight to start. Because I got to look up the Torx spec, and so I know how tight they actually go on. And these are going to push that new gasket in a lot better once we start to tighten these down. Because you'll notice that your middle ones here, the studs aren't going through as much as the ones on the end. So when I torque them down, I will focus on the middle and work my way outward, so that way it pushes them down and kind of flushes it out evenly. Okay, they're finger tight. So I went ahead and I looked it up, and if you have an E36 or Z3, these nuts that attach to the top of the intake manifold to the cylinder head go down to 11 foot-pounds. All right, 11 pound-feet. If you have a V8 or I think the 5 series, then it'll be 16 pound-feet. So make sure you check your Bentley manual or do some research to be sure. Mine is 11 pound-feet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now use my socket wrench, and I'm going to just kind of start to tighten these down a little bit more just to get them snug again, and then I'll torque everything down. And I'm just in the middle, kind of, and work. Oh, I missed this one. And I'm just kind of trying to work my way outward. I need a longer extension, honestly. Reach back in here to get this back one. And then the front. All right, so they're just snug. I didn't do any cranking on them. They're just snug. So let's go ahead and get my torque wrench and put them all at 11. And I want to make sure I get the one in the middle first. All right, those are torqued. Now we'll get the bolt that holds it on the bottom on that bracket that mounts the bottom and secures this in place. All right, so now I'm going to do the fastener at the bottom. It was the 16 millimeter nut, and it goes on the stud that goes through the bottom bracket that mounts the intake manifold to the engine at the bottom. So the 16 millimeter. Let's go ahead and put that on. I don't know the torque spec for that right now. I'm just going to get it nice and tight, and I'll research that later and torque it later. Let's just try to get everything else assembled. My hand barely fits in there. And just for reference, so you can see where I'm working. I'm working on this 16 millimeter fastener. It goes right here. I remember this one was on fairly tight. I think I had to use my breaker bar to loosen it. but I don't really remember. So I'm just going to make it as tight as I can get it without over tightening. And I'll get Torx specs for it later. Let's get nice and snug. I don't want my intake to rattle loose, you know? All right, that'll do for now. All right, I'm not able to really find the torque spec for that. I'm just gonna torque it to 22 pound-feet, and hopefully that's not too much. That's the closest that I could kind of find by just doing research is 22, so I'm gonna do 22. If I end up changing it, I'll let you all know. Next, I'm going to remount the dipstick tube back down with that bracket. I believe that was this 13 millimeter bolt with the washer. So let's go ahead and get that tightened down. Okay. All right, and then for reference, follow the dipstick tube down. And right down there you have that bracket. Right there's where it bolts in. That's the 13 millimeter. I don't have a torque spec for that. I'm just going to get it tight. It's just the dipstick tube. That shouldn't need to be very tight at all. Alright. I'm just going to make that nice and snug. It's just the dipstick tube, so it should be fine. That shouldn't move or anything like that. Alright. Now that's out of the way. Alright, so I do see a mistake that I made. And it's with my CCV line right here. This, I forgot to make sure it was over here before I tightened it down, because now it's stuck between my oil filter housing and my power steering, and I can't get it over here, and if I try to force it, this is just plastic, I would crack that. So I'm gonna have to loosen the manifold again so I can get this to slide over to this side, because it plugs in right here. So that's my first mistake. So let me loosen this again and move it and re-torque everything down. I went ahead and I took all the bolts off, and I just lifted it up enough to where I could slip this back over, and then I tightened everything back down. Everything's torqued again. Now I did once again 11 pound-feet for the nuts on the top, and then I did 22 pound-feet for the one on the bottom, and now this will be able to reach the valve cover like it's supposed to. So I actually can just plug that in right now. Let's pull my plug out and let's plug that in. There is this O-ring on here. It's brand new, so I might need to add a little bit of silicone to get that to go on. So I'll see if I can get it on, but I might need to silicone it. Yeah, I'll have to silicone that. That's a very, very tight fit with that O-ring. Let that kind of soak around. Alright, I'll fight with it later. But yeah, just plug that in right there. I'm going to have to force it later. The next step that I'm going to make is I'm going to put the throttle body back on. That way I can start getting all this electrical mounted in place. Next is the throttle body, and this is that right here, and it has the 4 10 millimeter long studded bolts. You had 4 10 millimeters, and then there's a 10 millimeter nut that goes on the bottom here. I got that right here. Make sure you don't forget to pull out any paper towel you have stuffed down in there before you put your throttle body back on. Alright, so then you just come right down here and straight back here is where it goes in. So we pull this paper towel out, and it's going to plug in right there. So yeah, think of where your Disa valve goes. You have your idle control, and then straight below the idle control. The trickiest part putting this on is going to be getting all of your bolt holes to line up. But once you get one in, you should be able to kind of tweak it enough to get another one in. So try going on a diagonal. So that way you can, once you get one corner in and you kind of tweak it to get another corner in, the other two should line up. And don't forget, I did replace the gasket on this, and I cleaned the throttle body on a previous video. Trying to get this past all this electrical is the trick. right now. There we go. All of the stuff is in my way. Okay, I kind of got it jimmied in there. I cannot see where the bolts go. So I got it on finger tight at the moment. So the way that worked best for me, because I was struggling trying to hold it up and get a bolt in, is I started with the little stud that's on the bottom of the throttle body, and I put that stud through the bracket that's on this electrical piece that's right here. So once I got that bracket to fit on that stud, I put the 10mm nut on there just so that way it wouldn't slip off, and then this electrical piece ended up supporting the throttle body enough to where it held it up for me to where I could start getting the other bolts in. And I started with the top corner over here, got that one in, and then after I got that one in, I got the other lower one in, and then I got this one up here, and then I got this one down here last because this was the tightest one. And that's how I got them in finger tight. So I just gotta actually tighten them down, but that's the method that worked for me to get it in place, because otherwise it's really difficult to get those studs, those bolts into those holes, because you can't see them from the angle you're on. You can't really see them. You can kind of make out one on this side and maybe the two top ones, but once you have it on place, you can't see any of the other ones to line it up. So it gets tricky, but that bottom bracket definitely helped out on that bottom stud. It just made it a little difficult getting the bolt in on the side, because then you can no longer move this out of the way. But it worked. So I got it on. Let me tighten it down. And I'm going to crisscross. I did the bottom left. Now I'm going to do the top right. This way that gasket hopefully sits in there right. Yeah, I kind of feel around. Okay, so now I'm just tightening up that stud, holding on the electrical piece. You want it good and tight so there's no air leaks, but don't over tighten it, because I mean it's aluminum. But that part is good now. And then I went and I took the nut that was on here off, because now this bracket goes on this stud. Oh boy, that's going to be tricky to get that to go on. All right, I'll have to take these two Torx screws out so I can get this onto that bracket. So let me go get my Torx bit set. I think those were T40s. I'm trying to remember from when I did this last. I think those were T40s. Let's take these T40s out. I'm happy I got the socket set, because doing it with those hand tools was a pain. And these two T40s are holding on the idle air control valve. So I'm loosening that because I might need to pull it out so I can get this bracket on and then put the idle air control valve back on. We will see, but I can't get that bracket to fit on without moving this stuff around. So, all right, two T40s. Okay, now let's see if I can move it around enough to get this bracket to slip into place here. Come on, you. It's weird because all of this fit on here in a certain way, and now I got to get it. So what I might need to do is take that little 10mm nut off the bottom of the throttle body that has that stud, so I can lift this up and line it up, and then try to just loosen that nut so it doesn't come off the stud enough to where I can kind of move this around, because I have it too tight, I can't move it. All right, so I'm loosening it, but I'm not taking it off. Pull it one way, and I gotta lift it. There's no room to lift it. I'm gonna fight with this for a while. I'll be back once I get that in. Okay, so this is what I'm noticing. I had another bolt right here. So I took that one out because that is supposed to go right there, and bolt this part of that electrical into this bracket. This one here doesn't even line up, and this one here isn't lining up. I think I found the problem, and that has to do with the way it's sitting. Right now, this part is sitting directly on this hose where my water pipe is, which is preventing it from moving over where it needs to go. I see that there's a little bit more of a cutout groove right here, so it's probably supposed to sit on the hose right there, but it's not. Now this could potentially be an issue because I used an aftermarket water pipe, so maybe the orientation is slightly off and that's not sitting there. Thankfully, this is just an electrical harness, so it's not the end of the world. I don't have to worry about any kind of like air leaks or anything like that. So what I might just do is just zip tie the bracket on so it stays in place and call it a day, because it's not gonna fit, and if I push down and stuff, I'm risking breaking the connector for the hose, and I don't want to do that. And I can't pull it anymore because it's on that stud, so that's where it's going to sit. So I think this orientation was supposed to be out a little bit more, but this one doesn't do that. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to let that bracket kind of float in the wind. Possibly this might go on my Disa valve. I won't know until I get the Disa valve. It might bolt to the Disa valve. I don't know. But I'm going to T40 this back in the way I had it. And we're going to continue on. And I'll just zip tie it here, because I am not going to risk damaging my hose connection down there for it. So I'm going to improvise. You can hopefully get your stuff fitted correctly. Gotta get underneath it. There I go. And before I start taking them all off, let's make sure the new ones fit. So there's a comparison. Now, it does definitely look different. I don't know how well you guys can see this. This is the O-ring I just took off, and these are the replacement ones. They definitely look different, so that's a bit concerning. Now, this one was the ones that match the part number for these fuel injectors. So I don't know. I'll try to put it on, but this is definitely concerning because I'm worried the inside diameter, it looks like it might be too small on here. And then with this thickness, the injectors might be really hard to put back in. So I might have to just put these injectors in with these old O-rings and hope for the best, because these definitely don't look like the right ones. Alright, well, fits on here. I'll change them all and we will see what happens, because I am concerned that these O-rings aren't going to fit. And like, I'm not going to be able to get the injectors to fit in. But I'll change them out with these. Like I said, these were the ones that matched the exact same part number. So we will find out. They just look very different. I don't know, maybe these ones are just that wore out. I don't know, but I don't think so. Alright, let's just swap them all out. Placement O-rings are on. And we have to really hope that those aren't too thick, and that these will still fit inside that intake manifold. But we won't know until we try. Because, yeah, these old ones definitely were smaller. Let's go find out. Let's get this fuel line attached and pray these go in. Let's slide this electrical out of the way. We gotta find that pesky fuel line. Let's hope it didn't get trapped in a way that I can't access it, because that'd be a bad day for me. Okay, I can see it right here. Ah, I forgot there's still fuel in the rail. Spilled that everywhere. Here, let me drain that and clean that up. Okay, so I dumped the remainder of the fuel out of the rail. Now, where did I put that fuel line? Okay, I think before I connect that fuel line, because I can already tell how tight that's going to be, let's try to get the injectors to seat in first. Because I'm worried that I won't have enough slack, and I'm not going to be able to line these up. So let's get these to go into place. Because otherwise I'm going to have a bad day fighting with them. Okay, so they're kind of there. I just got to push them down. Hope these O-rings aren't too big. Man, I'm worried about these O-rings being too big. They're not going in at all. Okay, so I added some silicone and I dried off the excess so it doesn't go down inside the manifold there. Let's see if I can push the rail into place. Ugh. Yeah, I don't think they're gonna fit. All right, I'm gonna go back to the old O-rings. That's unfortunate. All right, my friend. So quick update. I went ahead and I put the old O-rings back on. They weren't cracked or damaged or anything, so I just reused the old O-rings and I was able to get the fuel rail pushed back down into place. And then I had my husband reconnect the fuel line for me because he's got a little bit more strength than I do. So he was able to push that fuel line in the back onto the fuel rail for me, and he got that to click in for me. So that part is done. We tried again to get this CCV hose to connect to the valve cover. It just will not connect. I'm pretty confident from looking at it that that O-ring is too big, because I even put some silicone on there and there's no way that O-ring is fitting in there. So I'm gonna have to see if I can get like an assortment pack of O-rings when I go to the parts store tomorrow to pick up coolant, and see if I can find something that will fit on here that will work for this, so that way this can connect. I have zero interest in tearing all this apart again to swap out this one hose. I am not doing it. So I gotta find an O-ring that'll work. So that'll be one thing that I can't complete on the project right now, but at least I can get everything else together. I'm gonna go ahead now and get this electrical piece clicked on once I get the fuel rail bolted down. I still got these little bolts right here. Those 4 bolts will keep the fuel rail in place. So I'm gonna bolt it, and then we'll get the electrical on, and we can get the vacuum line back there plugged in, and we can get the O2 sensors slipped back in, and then the top of the engine will be complete outside of the engine cover, the fuel rail cover that goes there. So it's coming together quite nicely. So let's get that going. Once I get the electrical in there, it's going to get tighter. So let me find that vacuum line back here and plug that back in. Now, where is it? It should just be flopping around back there somewhere. Found it. It kind of got bent behind something, but I found that. And if you look over here, there's this hard vacuum line right here. My little rubber one will slip right onto this piece. Vacuum line is connected. Let me bolt that fuel rail down quick so I don't forget. I think these were 10s as well. Oh, that is cross-threading. Don't do that. That's naughty. Come back out of there. Just gonna get, I'm not gonna tighten it. I just want it in there to keep that in place. Let me go to the other end. I want to make sure all these holes line up. And I'm just snugging these ones up. You don't have to make these crazy tight. All right, now they're all nice and snug. Now we get the fun job of getting the electrical to connect back into place. So I got this little CCV line back here that's in the way, so I'm trying to tuck that up. There we go. Pull that one up so that I can get this stuff to hopefully clamp into place like it needed to. Okay, it won't pull off, so as long as it doesn't pull off, then we're good. All right, so just go ahead and just work on pushing that electrical into all those little connectors snap back into place. All right, so I did plenty of pushing in the middle and on the ends, and I think it's all in because it's not loose anywhere anymore. So I think I got that back in. We'll go ahead then and put this connector back on here in the middle. It won't pull off, so that one's good. And then we got the Vanos one here. Let me take that label off. I don't need that label no more. And now that's clicked into place. Now we got to get those oxygen sensors slipped back in. Now remember, those were originally zip tied in the back, so I might need to zip tie these again just to ensure that they're not moving around and stuff. I don't know. Maybe I won't need to zip tie them. They are pretty freaking tight already. That one was there. And that one was there. Alright, well, that's all in place. Yeah, I don't foresee those moving, so I'm not going to zip tie them again. Those were zip tied originally, but I don't think it's necessary. That part's done. Well, let's get that Disa valve put on. Let's take those T40s out. I put all my fasteners back where I took them out so I wouldn't have to keep track of what goes where. And that has really made this whole thing go pretty easily. And don't forget to remove your paper towel plug. And we're going to put this back on. Do I have it upside down? Maybe I do. Yeah, I had it upside down. Alright, and that just fits together just like that. But before, so I almost forgot, before I put that in, I almost forgot, let me connect this connector here This is for that idle air control valve back there. We plug this in, otherwise it's going to be really hard to get it on there once that valve is put on. So let's get this plugged on there quick while I can still fit my fingers back here. There it went. Okay, that one's plugged in. And then I also had a connector at the bottom here that connected to my throttle body, so I gotta plug that one in while I can still see it. And that's a tight fit for your fingers, let me tell you. I had to use the pick tool just to get it off because I couldn't pinch it in by my fingers. If I don't plug this stuff in now, I'm not going to be able to plug it in very easily once I get the rest of the stuff on. And I almost forgot to plug this stuff in. I didn't hear it click, but it won't pull off, so I guess it's on. Yeah, it doesn't want to come back off, so that one's on. This one will plug into the top of the Disa, and this is one of my air hoses here. That plugs back into this. I had it. Okay, that goes on like that. That one's good. I have another connection down here. This one says purge valve. This one's my MAF. This one also goes to the purge. Huh. I see a connection down here that's not connected, but I don't see any more wires of anything that would go to it. Unless I got something trapped. Hold on. So, okay. This is where you label stuff. So, this one here, I wrote purge on it. So, this one I know plugs in right to here. And this one also says purge. And I know this one plugs in back here. And this is the MAF. And this is the one that goes to the Disa. So, those are all accounted for. But if I look down here, there's a connector right here. And I have nothing plugged into that piece. And I have all of my wires are here. And I'm feeling around to try to see if maybe it got pinched underneath the manifold when I put it on. But everything feels like it's connected where it's supposed to be. But let me go ahead and get those two purge ones plugged in, so they're out of the way. Now I'm going to try to get all my electrical plugged in, then I can put that Disa valve in this way, because that kind of gets in the way of stuff. This one says bottom reservoir. Ah, I found it. All right. So I found the plug that goes to that. It was in the front by my radiator. So we got it. Everything's accounted for. Let me just slide that down. All right, now we got it. I figured there had to have been something. All right, yeah, I just had it pulled over. I had it pulled over the top here, and it was laying in front where the fan would be. That's why I was like, where'd it go? All right, everything's accounted for. Let's just get everything plugged in. So since this one kind of has to wrap around everything else, I'll do that one first. Kind of tuck that down there. All right, take that tape off because it looks ugly. All right, that clicked in. And then this is one of my purge valves connections. Let's take the tape off of this one. All right. And that one plugs into it in the front. And of course, it's a bit tight here because of the reservoir for the power steering and everything. But we can force it to get on there. Okay, so I pulled the purge valve down. So now maybe I can click this on and then put it back up. There we go. That one was being a butt. Now, put it back on its little hanger. It just has like a little rubber piece that goes on a hanger in there. All right. Now that's back in. Everybody's happy when they're in their home here. Okay, and then here's my other one that says purge on it. And then this one connects right onto this one. Yeah, that's right. Okay. And click it. Beautiful. Okay, so now we got the map sensor. I'm going to tuck that up higher so I don't misplace where that one is. And the only other one left then is the one for the Disa. Okay, we're good there. This goes on just like so. And then it's held in by two T40s. So you guys can see. I'm going to be rebuilding my Disa valve because there is a flaw with these that can destroy your intake manifold. I'll go over that on a different video, but I do plan on, I do have plans to rebuild mine. It's just not on the budget, you know, I gotta get this other stuff finished and then I'll budget for that. And then screw this other one in. All right, that's snug. All right, that's plugged in. Beautiful. All right, all that's left is the intake boot and the MAF sensor and the airbox. And then everything is, oh, and then we'll have to fuse box and the electrical piece over there has to get reconnected, and as well as reconnect the battery. But we're getting it. All right, so I got the first section of the intake boot. This section here, this part goes to the throttle body. You want this to face that way. So this goes to the throttle body. This end here is what goes into your idle air control valve. Okay, so I had to take the Disa valve back off so that way I could get that intake boot on. And that boot was more difficult than it should have been, but I got it on. It's just the issue is it's so tight, it's hard to get a 1/4-inch drive socket wrench onto there to tighten the clamps down. That was my issue, as I just was struggling to get those to the clamps. But I got it on there. So it's hopefully on all the way to where I won't have any like air leaking out of there. But so I hope I got it. But yeah, just take note of that. Put that intake boot on before the Disa valve. Now let's go ahead and get the next part of that intake boot attached. All right, once you get that first section of the intake boot on, put the Disa valve back on, because the second intake boot will get a bit too tight for you to get that bottom T40 back in there. So first boot, tighten it down, Disa valve, second boot. Now that we have the second boot, there's the nozzle right there at the top. All we gotta do now is twist this piece in. Remember, there was the small little air hose we had to disconnect to take the intake manifold out. Make sure you plug that back in there, and then you just kind of screw that back in, just like that. And now we can get the MAF sensor airbox part on. Now this is the part that's going to be interesting, because on all of the BMW like Z3 fan sites, like maintenance sites on Facebook, as well as Beamer Bum themselves, they all say that if you use this coil radiator, the original airbox will not fit. I did a test fit before I started putting the intake manifold on, before I started filming, and it looks like it's going to fit. So we're going to try it. If it fits, great. If it doesn't, I do already have a cold air intake picked out that I was planning on ordering if I had to get it. But I really want to see if my original airbox will fit, and because if it does, that's going to save me like $120. So let's try to get that on. I went ahead and I disconnected the overflow hose, so I have room to get the airbox in without damaging the new hose. Alright, let's see if this will drop in there like it's supposed to. Oh, hope if I remember to take that nut off here first. Oh yeah, I got plenty of clearance. I'm not hitting the hose. I'm not hitting the radiator. They said that you would hit the radiator or something. I'm not hitting anything. Alright, let me see if I can't get my MAF sensor part to plug in here. Okay. And then kind of. MAF sensor part. Oh yeah. They're so full of it. They're literally full of it, you guys. Look at this. It's perfectly seated right here. It's got a nice gap. I can put my finger in between there. It's not hitting the hose. And it's not hitting the radiator. And the little spot that connects there connects. And my MAF. I can use the original Airbox with this radiator. I don't know what they're talking about. Maybe they're talking about, maybe this runs into an issue with like the M model. I don't know, but this radiator only works for the 6-cylinder. So that rules out any fitment issues for the 4 cylinders. And then I don't know what they're talking about, you guys, because this fits just fine. I can use the stock Airbox, no problem. So yeah, that's $120 saved. Fantastic. Because yeah, they kept saying that the box wouldn't fit back in because it would hit like the hose of the radiator or something. But yeah, that is definitely not true, at least in my case. So fantastic. Let's go ahead and tighten these clamps down, plug the MAF sensor in, plug my overflow hose back in, and yeah, this is going great. Alright, so let's get this clamp nice and tight. And then my MAF sensor, electrical is right here. Let's pull that tape off because that looks ugly. And plug that right in. No problems at all. Yeah, I have no clue what they're talking about. This whole thing fits. Making sure it's connected where the air comes in, and it is. Yeah, this is awesome. All right, put this on. So that's great. You know, I ran into a lot of hardship with that lower radiator hose and thermostat costing me money. So now that I don't have to buy new cold air intake like I was planning on. Hold on, I almost forgot to plug the Disa valve back in. All right, pull that out because that was on there too. There we go. Almost forgot to plug that in. Fantastic. Oh, that makes me so happy that I don't have to buy a new cold air intake. I mean, a different one will look cool, so I might, you know, get it down the road just for like an upgrade thing. But for right now, because I, you know, had to do this expensive project, I can do that at my leisure now, which would be nice. Okay, that's done. I got to get that cover put back on. We got to get that cowl put back. We got to get the fuses and get the jump cable reattached. And we're done outside of my one CCV connection not going together, which I'll deal with that another day. I'll try to buy a package of O-rings and see if I can't find something to makeshift to make that work, because I do not want to tear this apart and buy yet another CCV kit. Nah, I don't want to do it, so I gotta make that one work. So let's get the rest of this stuff on. Or I'm gonna get that rear cowl put back on. I'm not gonna put the fuel rail cover on because I'm gonna want to try to make sure the car starts and that I don't have any fuel leaks or anything before I completely bundle it up. So let me grab these nuts down here and loosen those off so I can slip this cowl back on. All right, that's on. All right, next let's focus on this side. I want to get all this reassembled over here. All right, so let me take this box off. I must have tightened a couple screws. Just make sure those are loose. You let go. Okay. Because I got to get all of these. So I got to slip that back through, get and put this clamp back on over the top of it on the other side here. And I got to remember, what size was that? What size was the nut on this thing again? I know this one's a 19. I don't remember the size of this one, so let me go figure out what this one was. All right, so it's a 13 millimeter. So you need a 13 and a 19. All right, so let me first kind of shove that back through the hole there, and then I need my little clamp thing. So then this one goes on first, and we'll kind of snap in if I can figure out how that went on. Hold on, I know these snap together. Let me kind of hold it there. So this one sits there, and then this one here is supposed to click into it. Okay. For whatever reason, it doesn't want to snap, but whatever. And then you have like your little battery connector right here. Just slip that right on that electrical bolt right there that we just slipped in. Then we can get that nut to go on that. All right, we'll get that nice and snug. Okay. Then snap on the other little protective cover. All right, slip electrical back down in its home. And we can put that cover back on. And there is a gasket built into this cover. All right, let me just screw that down. This is where a drill comes in handy. I have some, but the quotes are not out where I am right now, and I don't feel like going to chase after them, so. All right, that's nice and snug. And then we had this trim piece here that kind of snaps on it. Get the click, and then the beautiful weather stripping. Trying to make sure it connects on this end. And now that's all together. All right, I just kind of sat them in here, so let's hope I don't lose them. Okay. So this number 5 one went right here. And this one went right here. Should be a gap in there if I remember. I'll double check. My thing was 3 and 18. So yeah, there should be, I'll have a gap here. I don't have anything in 17. All right, fuses are now plugged in. Beautiful. I almost forgot. Before I reconnect the battery, I better get this overflow hose put back on. Don't want to forget to do that. All right. Now we can connect the car battery. All right, so lift up. Whoop, sparks, sparks, sparks. At least my battery didn't die. All right, we got power again. I keep the plastic in there so if I haul anything, my carpet stays clean. And then I got some old floor mats just in case. All right, and my light came back on now that I have power. And I can take my little safety rag out of the hatch. Sweet. All right, and all that's left now is to see if it'll start. Now, I'll have to turn the key on without trying to start it. This is going to activate the fuel pump and start to get the fuel primed again in the system. And then I'll see if it'll crank over. Now, I can't let it run because I have 0 coolant in the system, but I just want to see if it'll start. All right, and you heard it, it starts. It's a little rough because, you know, they had to try to get fuel in there, and I didn't want to run it really long because there's no coolant. But it starts, so we're going to leave it alone. And then, so next up is to actually bleed the system with some coolant, so that way we don't overheat and damage the engine. So, fantastic. Job well done. And there you have it, everybody. I got it all reassembled. I'm so excited. This took a long time. Like I've been saying in my videos, this was supposed to be a 2-week project, and it quickly turned into a 4-month-long project. The car started up. Like I said, it's going to be a little rough for a little bit. It's been sitting for 4 months. So it's going to be a little rough at first. It's going to, you know, have to push that fuel through. I'll get some coolant in it. We'll get that taken care of. And we'll try to get some fresh fuel in there because that stuff's getting kind of old now. But hopefully everything works out. And if there's any more problems, we'll have to troubleshoot it as we go. Hopefully we don't throw any codes. So hopefully everything is fully attached. Hopefully the fuel system is attached properly to where that won't be an issue, and hopefully the air intake system, like the air boot and all that, hopefully that's fully on so we're not leaking air and you know, having not enough getting into the engine and stuff like that. But it should be good. So we've got a lot done. This project is pretty much done. I just got to get the coolant in it and she's drivable. So hallelujah. All right, you guys, thank you so much for checking out the video. Give it I need that thumbs up. You guys give me that like and subscribe, and go ahead and check out my Instagram at CoolCatTerri. And I can't wait to see you all on the next one. Bye.